Marital rape is criminalized in many countries. Throughout history, until the 1970s, most states granted a husband the right to have sex with his wife whenever he so desired, as part of the marriage contract. However, in 20th century and especially since 1970s, the women's rights group initiated the anti-rape movement, demanding that they be given sexual autonomy over their own bodies, including within marriage. These rights have been increasingly been recognized, and consequently marital rape has been criminalized by about 150 countries as of 2019. In some cases, marital rape is explicitly criminalized. In other cases, the law makes no distinction between rape by one's husband or rape by anyone else. In few countries, marital rape was criminalized due to court decision. In some countries, the prevailing logic goes that there is no such thing as marital rape, since the word to rape originally meant to steal or to seize and carry off, and it is impossible to steal something you already own, and a husband owns his wife in marriage. However, in few of those countries that do not criminalize marital rape, such as Malaysia, husband can still be punished if he uses violence in order to have sex with his wife. According to Section 375, Exception 2 of Indian Penal Code, sexual intercourse by a man with his wife and the wife not being under 15 years of age is not rape. A study done by UN Population Fund tells us that more than 2/3 of married women in India between the ages of 15 and 49 have been beaten, raped or forced to provide sex. To decode, in India, it is legal to rape a woman as long as you are married to her. We live in 2021 and this is the level of barbarism in our country. A careful analysis points to several factors. An outdated IPC dating back to the Victorian era, a rigidly patriarchal society across India's myriad religions that suppressed women's voices and agency, and a culture where marriage and family in a dated sense of words still hold utmost significance as the building blocks of society. But arguably the most stubborn obstacle in the way of India criminalizing marital rape is none other than Union government itself. Despite the fact that at any given point there are several writ petitions before Supreme Court and the various high courts filed by individuals and civil society organizations challenging the marital rape exception to Section 375, the government has continued to shield men who rape their wives by citing the same few reasons repeatedly. One critical glance is all it takes to break the reasons down to their bare bones: misogyny and misconception. The Indian government has suggested that those seeking to stop women being raped by their husbands were blindly following Western customs. The Times of India reported this country has its own unique problems due to various factors like literacy, lack of financial empowerment of majority of females, the mindset of society, vast diversity, poverty, etc. And these should be considered carefully before criminalizing marital rape. Translation: the government is arguing that since a majority of people in India are illiterate, uneducated, poor, conservative and religious, unlike in America, they believe that husband cannot rape his wife because a good Indian wife will dutifully consent to her husband forever. This, the government submits, is a unique obstacle India faces in criminalizing marital rape, by the admission of which it acknowledges the lakhs of men are violating their wives' sexual consent on daily basis based on their mindset, and that what they are doing is in fact the crime of rape. Then the government argues that if in such circumstances they criminalize marital rape, a majority of marriages will fall apart, presumably because women will stand up to their rapist husband, who will become criminals in the eyes of law, and avail of legal course they have to seek justice and protection. At this point, it becomes important to ask, by placing so much value on marriages and family, pushing for status quo, whose right is the government protecting? The husbands raping or the wives being raped? None other than Supreme Court agrees that criminalizing marital rape does not threaten marriages in any way. In Independent Though versus Union of India, the court specifically explained that marriage is personal and nothing short of Indian state criminalizing marriage itself can destroy the institution of marriage. It is said if divorce and judicial separation have not destroyed the institution of marriage, criminalizing marital rape certainly cannot either. Interestingly, the High Court of Gujarat also recently ruled that non-consensual act of marital rape violates the trust and confidence within a marriage, and that marital rape is what has damaged the institution of marriage. If criminalizing the violent rape of 2/3 of married Indian women destabilizes the institution of marriage and family, then so be it. The idea that once a woman is married, she hands over never-ending, continuous sexual consent to her husband is deeply embedded one in our society, but the laws are supposed to be ahead and above people's prejudices, the moderator of personal-based emotion. Instead, Indian laws still date back to 1700s when Matthew Hale of England had declared that the husband cannot be guilty of rape committed by himself upon his lawful wife, for by their mutual matrimonial consent and contract the wife hath given herself up in this kind unto her husband which she cannot retract. Thus, despite a contradiction as incriminating as a 2017 Gujarat High Court ruling which clearly says it has long been time to jettison the notion of implied consent in marriage, the law must uphold the bodily autonomy of all women irrespective of their marital status. This argument that women will falsely accuse their husband left, right and center has been used time and time again for various domestic violence laws enacted to protect women in India, including Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, the Dowry Prohibition Act, Section 498A of the IPC, which criminalizes physical and mental cruelty against a woman by her husband or his family. There is never any direct empirical evidence for the misuse claim except the low rate of conviction in dowry and cruelty cases. But what we do know is 2 out of every 5 women in India are victims of physical, sexual or emotional domestic violence. Choosing the number of convictions as the parameter to gauge the reality of the situation is also problematic because low conviction rates in India are often because of poor investigations, improperly collected or no evidence and omissions of witness statements, and not because women are out to get men. And even if some women misuse the law, that's what the judiciary is there for, to weed out the false case and dismiss them with appropriate penalty. To quote Gujarat High Court judgment again, Justice J.B. Padriwala says, "Let it be stressed that the safeguards in the criminal justice system are in place to spot and scrutinize fabricated or false marital complaints, and any person who institute untrue, malicious charges can be made answerable in accordance with the law." The misuse argument is also faulty in that it ignores how disadvantaged women are even to use the marital rape law if it exists, let alone misuse it. A lack of resources, access to legal help and stigma all provide resistance to women actually achieving justice under these laws, as can be seen from rape and domestic violence laws. The arguments upholding the legality of marital rape dated and violently oppressive, especially when contrasted with some of the more forward-thinking statements made by the judiciary independently. The facts, logic and precedents are all there to compel the state to do good by half the population of India. But until the mindset of those in charge change to give importance to a different set of established arguments, little will change. The strongest argument in terms of legal precedents can be found in Justice K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India, in which Supreme Court recognized the right to privacy as fundamental right and specifically said that includes additional privacy reflected by the ability to make intimate decisions primarily consenting of one's sexual or procreative nature and decisions in respect of intimate relation. Forced sexual intercourse and cohabitation is a violation of the fundamental right. Since this ruling doesn't differentiate between married and unmarried women, there is no explicit ruling that says women lose their fundamental right to privacy upon marriage. All women have the fundamental right to be able to consent and to be able to say no. If Indian lawmakers need help figuring out what codifying marital rape as a crime in our laws should sound like, here's a pro tip from the bench of Acting Chief Justice Geeta Mittal and C. Hari Shankar of Delhi High Court. Marriage does not mean that women in all time ready, willing and consenting. The man will have to prove that she was consenting party. It is really that simple.